Well, thank you for asking us to reflect on the day. I think maybe if I just tell you a little bit, I'm a foster carer. My family and I foster, have done for about 8-9 years now. Prior to that, I was a sexual health counsellor, and I've done some doctoral research into young pregnancy and parenthood, which is what led me into fostering. I thought I'd put my money where my mouth is and actually work with some young parents. I'm also a trustee of the Fostering Network, so I'm here wearing lots of different hats, really. It feels like the day has gone really quickly, but when I reflect on what we've covered tons and tons of material. It's been fascinating, and I cast my mind back to that DVD at the beginning of those young people who have so much to tell us, really. And it feels today, for me, like it's brought all the strands of my life together, and I'm so excited that we've had the opportunity to talk about the things that we've been able to share. A few things really jumped out at me throughout the day. Sue's talk was inspirational. I was really shocked by her figures around the number of primary school children accessing pornography. I think we tend to, certainly as a foster care, I tend to think this is something that relates to older children, but that was a startling figure and reminded me that it's really not. And we take children of all ages, so I need to be really mindful of that in my practice. Somebody talked about the child becoming invisible in the realms of our policy making and our documentation. We lose sight of the child, and I think as foster carers, I certainly have experience of that. And I think we really need to hold on to not losing sight of the children. So I think about my own practice in rural Wiltshire, where we're a very rural county, and foster carers are spread far and wide, and we don't come together very often. And I think about all the things we've talked about here today, and I think that in many ways that seems like a world apart from what we actually talk about in Wiltshire. I think as a foster carer, the issue of talking about sex with the young people I've fostered has come up less than a handful of times. We don't talk about it full stop. It's terrifying. It's terrifying, it's complicated. It's difficult enough for me as a grown person to talk about sex. It's difficult enough for me as a grown person with young children and teenagers of my own to talk to them about sex. Talking about sex with looked after children is something else again. It's very scary territory. Not least because if we get it wrong, we're at risk of all sorts of allegations, and you know, we have to be very mindful of that as we open up these discussions. I think that there's so much in there that we could and should be talking about, but I think that for a lot of foster carers, it's just too scary. So I really welcome today as a chance to start opening up those discussions. And one of the things that really, in light of that previous comment, that really was very important for me was the diagram that Carleen showed us about the child and the home, and then the systemic surrounding for the child. And I think that that's really important because foster carers take children and then they come to us in our home, but that's not the be-all and end-all of what we deal with. It's that whole ecosystem that surrounds that child, and we have very little control over that. So that was a very helpful diagram in helping our group think about how to create a safe space for that child, how to just create a safe space, let alone that bigger picture of keeping them safe sexually. And I was really pleased to hear that from our colleagues in Sweden who told us that they haven't got it all sussed out, because I really thought you did. And that you too have challenges. And then I was left thinking, as the afternoon progressed, what are the consequences of not talking about sex? It's hard to do it, it's really challenging for us, but what happens if we don't do it? I'm afraid as a sexual health counsellor, as a foster carer, I've seen the consequences of not talking about it far too many times. We have to talk about it, there is no choice. We've got to learn how to do it, we've got to confront our own issues, and we've got to get on and do it, however challenging that might be for us. And we've got to do it holistically, which was the word Helen used, and that was a very important word to me. It's not just about looking at the child as a sexual being or as a looked after child. They're children, they're young people, just like we were, and we saw them at the beginning on that DVD. And it's really important to hold on to that and just take their sexuality as a small part of that, and to remember that they have agency with all of that. And the way we do that is through talking, which we've done today, which is fantastic. But more importantly, it's about listening. And we have to listen to what our young people need us to do for them. And I think that's the thing that I want to take away from today. And I welcome the fact that we've had a chance to talk about it. And I hope that this is just a very small part of that journey to moving that forward. So thank you.
I'm nowhere near as organised as what Helen is. I just jotted things down as we went, and we had a fantastic table over on number 6, in that we had 2 Swedish care leavers there who were very informative, and it was just a pleasure to work with them. So that has been quite a highlight, apart from the wonderful speakers that we've heard today. Hearing their perspective on their care made me realise that perhaps we are getting some things right and some things so totally wrong, which is a bit scary. And I'm going to go home and I'm going to talk to my children that are in my care a lot more about everything we choose to do as a family. I'm a lone carer, and I've got 2 children in placement at the moment. Both are girls who have had horrendous backgrounds. So their introduction to sex was at a very, very early age. And I've had about 37 children in my care over the last 10 years. Some for 1 day, some for 3 years. And I would say, with the exception of one, they've all had very improper introductions to their sexual life. So whether that works with the statistics we've heard today, I'm not really sure, but it does show something that we were talking about on our table, of a pendulum that seems to be swinging from the day when I was brought up, and the inhibitions that we had. I'm probably the oldest person here, but you know, through to this sort of golden age we went through, where, you know, free love and everything was okay sexually, to this point now where we've got very tender young children being exposed to media, to peer pressure, to general bullying, to, you know, just horrendous abuse. And that whole raft of exploitation that is taking place in everyday life. So today has been really helpful to me, because it's made me think I need to face this a little bit more head on, and I need to be challenging when I get a placement come through to my household of a young person, the information that I'm receiving. I need to know what is going on in this child's life. I need to know what has gone on and but hasn't been proven in this child's life, because I'm working in the dark a lot of the time, and I'm working without the guidance of a history. I'm not that child's natural birth parent. I'm dealing with what somebody else has done before. And I can just give you a little story of the child that is in my care at the moment, who was in 17 placements before she arrived with me. Out of those placements, I got no information, just failed. Placement failed. Placement failed. And nothing about physical abuse, sexual abuse, sibling abuse. Nothing of that has been written in that child's documents. Nothing is in their care plan. Until that child discloses, I was put there because, I was taken from there because, do I build a picture of what I'm dealing with? So if there was anything that I would say to people who are doing research and studies and working in a professional way to improve the life of the looked after children that come into my life, is to do it, as somebody said, as a one-stop shop. Do it in joined up writing. Let us as carers have that information. Don't hold it back because we're not in your professional circle. Give it to us up front. Let us make the choices how we support that child. We are also professionals in that we have done huge amounts of training. We have got, well, I have, as I work for Core Assets, FCA, huge amount of support, access to therapists who can all help me in the parenting role of that child, if I've got the information. But when we're talking about, you know, these grey areas, it's the same sort of thing as the grey area between, I put down here, not being able and equipped to say no, is that consent, or an enthusiastic yes? Carers can also make choices on how they support a child by having all the information to say, no, I can't cope with that child's problems. Or an enthusiastic yes, that yes, I can take that on and I can help that child reach their goals and full potential in an adult life. But without that shared information and the whole history of that child coming forward, I don't think I can be a relationship teacher to that child. I think I need that information to move that child forward and work through their demons. So all the wonderful presentations have really helped me focus on that today, and I really thank you, because it's been quite inspirational and I've enjoyed every minute, but it's also made me sort of think I'm going to go back and not just ask anything to do with sex, but just where do you want to go on holiday and what do you want for tea tonight, instead of making those decisions on my own. Because I think if they're making the small decisions, they're going to be more able to make the big decisions. Very true.